The programs, all of the programs you sent me doesn't work. I don't know why is that.
Yeah, it was quite complex.
Yeah, I think the computer is shutting down, Alina.
But let's try to carry on this in the best way as possible. Okay. So
Aline.
yes, Professor. I think it's just
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, the computer is not working.
so. What do you prefer?
So it's from my phone now. So I'm doing from my phone.
Okay.
I will see the computer after we're done with that.
And Professor,
you see me? You see me?
yes, perfect. And
okay.
If we had any trouble about the problems with the time, because here we have like 40 minutes, I will create another room when we can go inside and manage to carry on with this conversation if it's okay.
Sure. I mean, you want to do like we just only have 30 minutes, you said?
Yes, 40 minutes for each calling, I mean.
Oh, you mean for each segment? Okay.
Yes, for 40 minutes. 40 minutes. It's like
40 minutes for each segment, right?
40.
Hey, Romero. I mean, finally, I made you, man. So see? I don't know what's happening
nice
to the computer. The computer is shutting down. I mean, I don't know why.
Yeah, me neither. It was my first time there, and I don't know, maybe the connection.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, the programs, the programs are different, and it changed the setting of the computer. It sounded the computer is taking a little bit of time. I mean, it's freeze and crash down. I don't know what that is. I hope to be able to fix it after the thing. Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, maybe the fact that they seem to use like various hosts, different hosts, for connection.
Probably,
maybe.
Because I'm talking from the phone, so, yeah.
Well, but it's nice to see you, man. Very nice.
Nice to see you, too. Thanks for having me. Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, thanks for having me. So, yeah.
Again,
that's easier to do the Zoom thing. Yeah. No, you're good. That's fine. We're going to work out. Things are going to work out. That's all right.
Carry on with this.
Hi, Aline.
Hi, Professor. Sorry for taking so long.
No problem. I just have to warn you guys and maybe even apologize beforehand because I have to leave at 5:30 at most.
Sure.
No
problem.
In 1 hour.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I totally understand. I mean, yeah.
I'm sorry, but
no, you don't have to. You don't have to apologize. Yeah.
But I wish I could say more. It's always nice to talk to you. Actually,
Thank you for having me.
I remembered you just the other day. I went to that restaurant, that Arabic restaurant.
Oh yeah, the Lebanese one. Which is, I hope that we can do that soon after the pandemic, if the pandemic is gone. How is Brazil now? Is it things are going all right?
Not really. I mean, it's kind of crazy, and the pandemic, there is a lot of like how can I say? I'm sorry, the word's escaping me. Mixed messages, like from the president saying something, and then the governors are saying. So we're not talking about the second wave. We're talking like about a tsunami, like a huge wave Let's
I
not.
can't
It's
imagine, man.
it's
That's true.
decreasing the COVID cases, but it's still very high. I mean,
Still
it's
very high.
about yeah, we had like over 1,400 cases a day of deaths a
Okay.
day, and now it's like 500, but still very high in my opinion.
Still
So
high, yeah. I agree with you. Still very high, yeah. Still very high, yeah. It's
so
yeah. I hope by the end of the year things should be okay. I mean, because we can see now the second wave in Europe, which is totally bad. Yeah. I mean, in the United States too, things are not in a good shape at all in the U.S. Yeah.
yeah, you are in the
Yeah.
U.S. for
No,
some
not right
reason.
now. No, I'm in Lebanon at this time. Yeah, I'm in Lebanon. So I should be back to US in February. Yeah, I should be back in
Okay.
February. On Sunday,
Get
I'm going to Egypt to see my parents and teaching there for the end of the till the end of the fall, and then I should be back to the US on February. Yeah.
Okay. And so
Yeah. I
how's
mean, we
everything in
think it's
Lebanon?
better. Lebanon is okay. I mean, you know, after the explosion was not good. Things it was devastating a little bit. But I mean, they are recovering a little bit, but they will taking time. Of course, it will take time. It's gonna take a lot of time.
Yeah,
It's not easy, Romero. It's not easy at all. It's not easy.
yeah, I imagine that.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Sorry, let me, Aline and NUCIC and NUPRI, whenever you're ready, guys.
Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, I'm ready. Adini, whenever you're ready, just let me know.
Let's go.
Okay.
So, Professor, again, both of you, sorry for this
That's
quite crazy stuff about programs. But now
happens.
I will give the word for ceremonialist to start this speech. And we already have a second link for the continuation to carry on with this with our meeting, okay? So Ana
Sure.
Barbara is with you the word now, okay?
Yeah.
Thank you, Aline. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the first round of talks of this podcast. My name is Ana Bárbara Damasceno, International Relations undergraduate student, and I will be the chair of this talk. This podcast was organized by the Language and Culture Center, NUCIC, represented here by the founding president, Aline Sabino, and by the International Relations Research Center, NUPRI, represented by its Vice President Laura Vendrusco, and by Juliana Moliner, former Catholic University of Brasilia student and current master student. To crown our debut, we have invited important names to speak about the nomination of Mohamed Barret to the American Supreme Court and what could be impacted by this decision. To do this, we have invited Professor Mohamed Arafa, Doctor of Juridical Science, Professor of Law at the University of Alexandria, Egypt, Associate Professor of Law at Cornell University, School of Law, and Professor of Law at the Indiana University School of Law. We have also invited Professor José Romero Pereira Jr., Master and Bachelor in International Relations from the University of Brasilia, Professor of International Relations at the Catholic University of Brasilia, and Associate Professor at the Brazilian Diplomatic Academy of Rio Branco Institute. It's a pleasure to have you with us at this talk. We would like to present Beatriz Santiago and Yasmin Araújo, undergraduate students of International Relations at the Catholic University of Brasilia, who will guide the roundtable of debates and this present interview. To open this discussion, we will ask Professor Mohamed Arafa to present his initial observations.
Sure. Thank you very much, Potardi. Thanks very much for having me here. I deeply appreciate that. I mean, it's always great to be at NUPRI. I mean, I've been there, I think last year or the year before, I think 2 or 3 times with the Catholic University. One of the great things that I wanted to thank Professor Romero for having me for the second or the third time, actually. This time is virtually due to the uncertain time. that we have it. So it's, I hope that I will be back to Brazil soon. It's amazing country to be there all the time. It has been for me like 4 years. I've been back and forth to Brazil, but this time it's a bit hard. So thanks for having me, and thanks Romero for having me. Alini, thanks very much for arranging this. It was a great thanks for having me on that and for the program. And I appreciate all the organizers. I think it came just this topic when we were talking about the nomination of Donald Trump, Supreme Court nominee. It's getting a little bit tricky at the moment, and specifically just we're still mourning, I think, one of the greatest giant iconic, the late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And it was a shock, it was a big shock. To be honest, I wasn't expecting that it was gonna happen before Trump first term. I was praying all the time that will not happen, but it happened even before the terms end. And now we are just only, I think, 5 days away from the election. And we are expecting, I'm not sure if we'll be able to identify or to have a US president by November 3rd. I'm expecting that we'll have a lot of contests of this election. Should he lose, I think it will be it will be really tricky if he lose, because I assume it will be the first time to see some violent activities and violence act in the United States, which is very sad, specifically from his supporters. But the idea when we're talking about the Supreme Court in the United States and how now the court is shifting to the conservative perspective, and that's very concerning at the moment, specifically when we're talking about critical issues, specifically if you are replacing a very, very liberal justice with a very, very conservative justice. However, I can tell you that we are not sure at this point how Coney Barret will rule on critical issues. And in my opinion, here, it will be a little bit tricky to identify from now. Specifically, she, as a judge, she have little experience as a judge because she just got appointed to the Court of Appeal or the Appellate Court, I think like in 2017, so almost 3 years ago. But she spent all of her time as a law professor at Notre Dame Law School in Indiana. And I can tell that she has been a very, very rigorous professor. She has been in a very, very good shape. She is very talented in academic writings. You can check her law reviews articles in the United States. She published in a very well robust law reviews, including Cornell Law School. She is, as a professor, she had been in a very good shape, I can say that. And I can tell you one of the main things that I do disagree with a lot of people at the moment, that they think that Amy Barrett will just have an agenda of Donald Trump that she will apply, which I totally disagree with this, because judges never have agenda. However, that I can tell you that there is a kind of politicization at the current moment within the judiciary in the United States, of course, all over the world, but I mean, it's in the United States now, which is very upsetting because we never had such a thing on the United States, or never experienced like the judiciary to be like, I can say, to be politicized, which is so bad or so upsetting. But on the other hand, it will be interesting to watch how she will do it. So let me start. Late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, as I'm sure that most of you know, that she had been a pioneer and iconic jurist in the United States. And she had been shaping the whole ideas in terms of women's rights specifically and gender equality. And she spent all of her time around that area, mostly. And probably you have been knowing that Ruth Bader Ginsburg, or RBG, she had been fighting for all that because herself, she got suffered from this sex discrimination. Because one of the main things, if you watch it, even the documentary or the movie RBG, Notorious RBG, that she mentioned that she was not able to access a legal periodical at Harvard Law School because she's just a woman. And that's one of the main things. The other thing, like, for example, also she was not able, even after she graduated from law school, Columbia Law School and Harvard Law School, she was not able to join a law firm. And that was very complicated, and even in New York. And then at some point, she joined it in at some point, and then she started to work on that. And then she got invited to work on women's rights projects. And then she went to academia, and she had been hired as a faculty member at Rutgers Law School in New Jersey. And that was interesting because she spent some time in academia. And then she clerked and worked as a judge. And then she moved in 1993 to the Supreme Court by President Bill Clinton at that time. And it was interesting because she fought for women's rights and gender equality. The main thing that she had been talking about abortion rights and I mean, the equality within salaries between the two sexes. And she had been talking about the social security and social solidarity regarding the two sexes, and how that there shouldn't be a kind of a discrimination between the two sexes in terms of salaries or so. In addition to different critical things. But here we have to understand when it comes to the Supreme Court of the United States, you know that mostly cases when it go to the Supreme Court, it's a long process. And this is one of the main things that people also got confused about, because they said Trump nominated Coney Barret, and they think that Amy Barrett one day she would wake up and say, let's reverse this case. It's not working like that, for sure. So the case, when it go to the Supreme Court, there's a long process, because it first have to go to the district courts, or the first instance court as we call them, and then have to go to the Court of Appeal, and then have to be guaranteed by what we called in the US system right of certiorari, and then go to the Supreme Court in case it have been controversial, and if the appellate court will not able to give a decision or so on that case before going to the Supreme Court. So it's a long process. There are procedures to do this. So it's not easy to understand how the cases go to the Supreme Court. And specifically cases when it go to the Supreme Courts mean that it have to be on a controversial issue, controversial matter. For example, abortion rights. And if, like, as you can see that some states, for example, have been talking about abortion rights. And like, for example, Indiana, which is one of the very conservative states. And as you know, Mike Pence, the vice president, or the current vice president, he was a mayor, the governor of Indiana, and he had been banning abortion rights or guaranteeing abortion for women. You will see different other issues, critical issues, like when we're talking about employment rights, worker rights, climate change, environmental issues, when we're talking about consumer rights, LGBTQ communities, and all that issues. So you'll see that there are a lot of things that could be critical. One of the main things also that a lot of people in the United States, specifically the Democrats, they have been talking about is the Affordable Care Act, or what we call the Obamacare. And they think that Coney Barrett have a big mission here, that she wanted to repeal the Affordable Care Act. And Trump administration, unfortunately, have been doing this for a while, for a long time, that they want to repeal the Affordable Care Act. And he said that we will replace that Care Act with a great plan, which I don't understand where is that plan. For almost 4 years now, we didn't have any healthcare plans from Donald Trump. And he's always saying, oh, I have a beautiful plan, and it's coming in 2 weeks, it's coming in 3 weeks, 4 weeks, now 4 years. We didn't see anything. He just wanted to claim all the time that they wanted to repeal the Affordable Care Act. At some point, I can tell you that the Republicans have been trying to do that in the House, in the Senate, and they failed in that. And the last time, if probably some of you have been remembering that, one of the great Republican senators stand for the Affordable Care Act, and we just lost him, I think, last year or 2 years ago, Senator John McCain, and he standed for the Affordable Care Act. And one of the main concerns also regarding this Affordable Care Act, or the health insurance in the United States, also that concerning a lot of people there, that Coney Barrett, in one of her articles, it's, I think, published in Texas Law Review, have been criticizing Justice Roberts, which is one of the conservative justices on the court. He's the Chief Justice of the court and appointed by President Bush. And she criticized Justice Roberts because Justice Roberts stands with the liberal for saving the Affordable Care Act from getting repealed. And one of the main things that Amy Barrett, when she was a professor, she was criticizing him, and she had been saying, in the meaning of what she had been said, or that Justice Roberts tried to save the Affordable Care Act beyond, or to save its provisions beyond the meaning of the statute, or the strict meaning of the statute, or something like that. That's I can tell you, it's a concern. So one of the main things here we have to understand that we do not have to agree with Amy Coney Barrett on her judicial philosophy, but that does not mean that Amy Coney Barrett will rule according to her judicial philosophy. Her judicial philosophy means that she's conservative. One of the main things that people connected her conservativity, of course, as you mentioned, as you probably heard, or as I mentioned, that they said that she had been clerked with Antonin Scalia, Justice Antonin Scalia, the late Antonin Scalia, and he's one of course, as you know, one of the most conservative justices on the Supreme Court. He had been a very wise man. I was like very, very impressed with his some of his work. I don't agree with all of his. I mean, you don't have to agree with every single dissent that he had been writing on the court. I remember when I moved to the United States, it was interesting because every time when I did my master's in Connecticut Law School, in the book of the criminal procedure, mostly you'll see Justice Scalia dissent. So it was interesting to me to see who's that man was. And it was interesting to know that he was one of the main justices on the Supreme Court. And it was interesting to me because one time in 2012, I think, yes, 2012, if I remember correctly, it was very interesting to me. I was at that time a doctorate student, and I got invited by the law school to go for a conference, or what we call the judicial clerkship program. And it was interesting because on the program, we heard the note, and that was in Louisiana, and that Justice Antonin Scalia was in Louisiana and giving a talk. And I said, oh, wow, let's go to hear that talk for that man. And that happened, and I saw him live. It was interesting to hear about his perspective, because one of the main things that you have to understand that Antonin Scalia's perspective or philosophy is mostly that you have to interpret the Constitution or the text as it's written at the time that have been revealed. Which is, of course, different than from, as late Ruth Bader Ginsburg, for example, said that you have to understand the philosophies beyond the Constitution and the circumstances that we are living in everyday life, which is totally different. So you will not be able just to take the Constitution or the written text or the lateral meaning of the Constitution. But Amy Barrett mentioned that she will be faithful to that. And she said that probably you heard in her nomination speech by Donald Trump when she said his philosophy is my philosophy, which means that she will be upholding the Constitution. But again, you cannot say, or you cannot be sure that Amy Barrett will rule as Antonin Scalia every single time within the conservative perspective. And this is what she mentioned within her confirmation hearing. It was very interesting because she mentioned, okay, so my philosophy is like Justice Scalia's philosophy, but on the Supreme Court, on the bench, you will have Justice Barrett, not Justice Scalia. And she's true on that. And one of the main things that I do also agree with her on that justices or judges shouldn't be policymakers. That's very important to understand, because policymakers is a job of legislators, or I can say the government, politicians, not judges. Judges have to apply the law to the facts and create legal principles to match the facts with the legal principles. So I do agree with her on that because I mean, judges can never be legislators. And I can tell you something here. This is now, I mean, for the last 50 years or 40 years, I can tell you that the Supreme Court of the United States got like a politicized court, and that's really bad, because when it's getting to that, or when you feel that the court getting politicized, that means that now you are not going to have justices to make sure that they are impartial and they have their judicial temperament and all that, but mostly you will see that they are policymakers. Democrats want some, Republicans want some, and now everybody say, okay, so we have 6-3 because Trump have 3 justices now on the Supreme Court. He have Justice Neil Gorsuch, he have Brett Kavanaugh, and he have Amy Barrett now. So only we have Justice Breyer on the liberal side, and Justice Kagan, and also Justice Sotomayor. In addition to the 3 of Trump, appointees, of course, we have the others from Bush time, the Chief Justice Roberts, and of course, Samuel Alito and Clarence Thomas. So the one that who swore in Amy Barrett 2 days ago, sworn in the White House. So it is very complicated to see how she will rule. But one thing that I can tell, and this is, I totally agree with one of the greatest liberalist law professors in the United States, Harvard law professor, Noah Feldman. He mentioned that Amy Barrett will never ever rule according to her judicial preferences or according to her philosophy if it's against the law. And that's for sure, I totally agree, because one of the main things I did understand, or I learned in the United States, that the judges are able really to distinguish between their personal preferences and the rulings and when they decide cases, which is very important. I mean, so they were not going to be used as a tool by the regime or by the government or the cabinet to be just like ruling in their favor. And that's one of the main things that she had been clarified. And she said, I'm not having an agenda here. I never asked it by President Trump or any of his cabinet to, for example, repeal the Affordable Care Act. And for example, a lot of people have been mentioning about the Affordable Care Act. We have to make sure about one legal thing here, or one legal process as well, because if you wanted to like repeal a legislation or a statute, it is not easy a process, because there is an idea, what we call in the United States law is severability. Severability means that if there are some portions of the act can stand if you find other parts of the act or the statute unconstitutional. And this is what we call the idea of severability, which means that, I mean, I do assume, because on November 10th, the Supreme Court have to look at a case, the lawsuit already by the government, Texas versus California, on the Affordable Care Act. And Justice Barrett will be on that. Of course, she will be on the bench. So she have to look at this one, and she have to decide. And she never give a hint about how she will rule on that. You know, I mean, based on the impartiality notion, you cannot give any hints or something about how you would rule cases or so when it comes to you. So in my perspective, she will use that idea, for example, the severability, because it's in the law, and it will just also give the impression to the public that I am ruling cases according to the law, according to the public interest, but not according to Donald Trump. However, he nominated her. So the idea here, just wanted to clarify to a lot of people that they confused that however Donald Trump appointed Amy Coney Barrett or nominated Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court, and she just got confirmed, that she will be applying a Republican or a Democrat's agenda. No, it will not going to work like that. However, at the same time, we do not have to agree with her judicial philosophy as a conservative. One main thing important is to clarify, a lot of people also have been talking about her faith, that she is very, very Catholic, and she is very conservative Catholic, and she's practicing that. I didn't understand why that's a problem in the United States. However, it's the country of the freedom of religion. You know, in the Second Amendment, the Establishment Clause, Exercise Clause, which mean that there is no religious test. So I was like asking myself and asking my friend, does being a practice Catholic will make you unfit for the job or for the office? And that was weird to me. And it was interesting because I said, okay, so now you have a practice Catholic. So is it going to be like the same when you treat Muslims or Jews or whatever? So it is weird. I mean, this is not the country that have a religious test. So how is that? Why you are just talking about her faith? I mean, her faith, it's her business, not anybody else's business. The main thing that I'm sure that she will never ever rule a case or decide a case based on her Catholic perspective or Catholic preferences. It doesn't make sense. So the idea was interesting to me because it's the country of freedom of religion, and at the same time they are questioning her faith. And I really found that like very absurd. I mean, like in 2017, when she got confirmed by the Senate as well to sit as an appellate judge within the 6th Circuit, I think, or the 7th Circuit. It was interesting because one of the senators, actually Dianne Feinstein, the ranking member of the Judiciary Committee, Senate Judiciary Committee, she was like telling her that dogma is living loudly within you. What? So it was very weird to hear such a comment from somebody that, are you questioning her religion? That's totally weird. And now you can see the same case. I'm sure that probably you heard about the last week attack in France, that also we wake up today on a bad news also that happened in Nice, this attack by the cathedral of the church in Nice. And I heard also about another attack in Saudi Arabia at the French embassy as well, which I'm sure, I can affirm you, that will hurt a lot of Muslims now. And mostly the regular moderate Muslim will pay the price because of just a few idiots. They consider themselves Muslims, and they are not, in my perspective, that they did this. But as you can see, the comments that came from Emmanuel Macron of France last week was not wise comments. As a president of a country, pretend that they are having a freedom of religion, you shouldn't say such a comments, like saying that Islam as a religion is a problem at the moment. What are you talking about? Are you talking about a faith that have been adopted by 1.6 billion people around the world? What are you talking about? So it shouldn't be, as a president, you shouldn't, where are your legal advisor to talk in that way, or to talk to the public like in that way? Saying comments like this, you cannot say such a thing, specifically if you're talking about freedom of religion or freedom of belief, which I can imagine that the Islamophobia now, it will be absurd at the moment. So it's interesting. So it was very interesting to me to see how they deal with Amy Barrett on that perspective. And I said, okay, so even for Catholic, they do this, but it never ever came to my mind that we will find out that the United States at some point, even they can declare somebody because he or she is religious, that they can find him or her like unfit for office or for public office or for a job. And that was very absurd to me. I think one of the main things is people have been critical as well too, like when we're talking about immigration. And they said that she might be also tough on immigrants or dreamers, what we call them the DACA program, that the kids that they came to the United States without any legal documents, and they just grown up in the United States, and President Obama put or legalized their status. And at some point, they work in the United States on the work visa and stuff like that. And now, I mean, Donald Trump administration, which is what we call zero tolerance policy, want to deport them and their families and make the separation, as we heard and we saw and we watched for the last 4 years. But they said about this too, and it came to my mind, it's hard for her. Why? Because we also saw that she adopted 2 kids from Haiti, a black, which is interesting to me, but which means that she will never ever be like, I assume, in my opinion, as a discriminatory, because a lot of people also have been saying this, and there was a very inappropriate comment from a professor at Boston Law School, mentioned something like that she used her 2 kids that from Haiti, the black kids, as a kind of a manipulation to just pretend they're white supremacist things or whatever thing, which I totally disagree with him on that, and that's inappropriate to say. And so I think on the question of her religion, it's very complicated. Of course, there are critical issues for sure, like when we're talking about the right to bear an arm, like which is your Second Amendment, or to have a gun, abortion rights, women rights, Obergefell, which is already legalized same-sex marriage in the whole of the United States, like consumer rights, voting rights. That's also very interesting, because one of the main things, it was very also like, you find it very inappropriate when she have been on the process of the confirmation hearings, and they have been asking her, Judge Barrett, could you please promise that you will rescue yourself on the bench if it comes in front of you, an election contested case. And that was so weird. She cannot rescue herself from that, because that means that she is already will deal with something like, I have an agenda, I rescue myself, so I will be able to guarantee that I will not going to deal with any case related to the election of Donald Trump. But this is totally, I mean, I think it's appropriate, much better, to leave the case coming in front of her, and she rule according to the law. And when she rule according to the law, that doesn't mean, as people will think, if the conclusion or the ruling came at some, because at the end the ruling will be 2 parties, 1 loser, 1 winner. So I think it's not easy to identify that, but you cannot also asking a judge for recusal for something that he or she will not be able to identify from at the moment. But one thing is, she mentioned, which is also good, that according to the law, there is a recusal process, that if she finds that the case in front of her, that she will feel that I will not going to be impartial or something, she can, of course, follow the process and rescue herself from that, which I found it okay. So there is an article came out 2 weeks ago by Noah Feldman, Harvard Law professor, and as I mentioned, he was totally liberal. Amy Barrett, she was totally conservative. Noah and Amy, they clerked together, and they have been, and Noah was naming or mentioning that she is the top of her class. And he said, when we have been clerking, when I have a problem with any case to analyze, I always ask Amy to help me with that. He said she have the very great legal talent. He said that I will never ever agree with her all of judicial philosophies, but he said that I can say 2 things, that Amy Barrett deserves to be on the Supreme Court. Second thing, 100% Amy Barrett will never ever rule according to her preferences. And I hear in my opinion, I think having Amy Barrett and Neil Gorsuch on the Supreme Court, which both of them are Trump appointees, I think are the best decisions in all of his presidency, to be honest, because people have been like also very scared about Neil Gorsuch as well. But you saw it was different, because Neil Gorsuch have some philosophies standing with the liberals. So, I mean, we cannot say just if you are a conservative, you will never ever stand with the liberal. I mean, the main example is Chief Justice Roberts, which is a very conservative one, and he standing with the liberals regarding the Affordable Care Act and regarding other cases. Well, look at what happens 2 days ago when the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania, for example, allowed that the ballots comes till November 6th, which means after the election day, which is November 3rd, it still be counted. And Justice Roberts have been on that. For North Carolina, I think yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, North Carolina, Brett Kavanaugh have been ruling that it shouldn't be, I mean, there's in Wisconsin, for Wisconsin, he said that all of the ballots should be just counted by the election day, and there is no other deadline if it comes after. So here, one of the main things you can find out that the conservatives can rule, but he mentioned that one of his, when he wrote the decision or the ruling, he said that, I mean, it's not the job of the state governors or or judges, or I mean, like when you're talking about district judges or whatever, state judges or something, or federal judges, to deal with the election laws. So it's here there are questionable technical areas that we have to understand. So, I mean, to conclude with that, because I know that I have been talking a lot, and I'm sure that I will be more than happy to respond to your questions, and I'll be more than happy to do that. I want to tell you something. Having Amy Coney Barrett on the Supreme Court, that doesn't make that things will be, or the future of the court will be dark. No. However, I do not like if Joe Biden, for example, win the election, if they will respond to that by like reviving the filibuster idea, which means that we will pack the court again. So instead of having 9, probably they're going to put another 2 liberals, which means that we will have 11, which means that we will change the policies. Of course, the Constitution doesn't have any kind of number to appoint justices of the Supreme Court, or which is the highest court in the land. But it would be like, I mean, since I think 100 years or 150 years, the number have been 9. It had been like 11, 12, and different presidents historically. But I mean, since 100 years or 150, I think it had been 9. And I think one of the main things that Justice Ginsburg said, that I think 9 is fine, when they asked her in one of her interviews or one of her talks. So politicizing the court is the horrible thing. So one of the main things that I really care about, more than having Amy Barrett on the Supreme Court, is just politicizing the court. Having justice for Democrats, having justice for Republicans, mean that we are politicizing. Oh, because we are having the White House or having the Senate, we should have our justices here. And the same for whatever, I mean, the Republicans or the Democrats. That shouldn't be like that, because it never, ever have been, in the past, wasn't like that. And the main example that Ruth Bader Ginsburg have been confirmed by 96 or 97 senators, can you imagine, among both Republicans and Democrats, and the same with Antonin Scalia. He's conservative, see? So for the very, very liberal, she had been confirmed by both Democrats and Republicans, and of course the independents, and the same things with Antonin Scalia. But we cannot see that at the moment, since probably, I mean, after Ruth Bader Ginsburg, I mean, since Bush time. So, I mean, now they are voting for Democrats and Republicans, and those justices have been, and this is one of, I mean, probably you heard about it, that the Republicans, before Donald Trump get into office, said that we will block President Obama nominee, Judge Merrick Garland, to be on the court. And he was very qualified, but they said because it's the election year. So it was the same. And the main thing is that here, I was not against having Amy Barrett on the court. I was just against the rushing the process of the confirmation. So I thought maybe, okay, Trump appointed Amy Coney Barrett, but she might, or nominated her, but at least maybe the confirmation should have been waited for or processed after the election, either Donald Trump or Joe Biden. That's it. And at that point, yes, of course, maybe Joe Biden can say that I will not gonna like to nominate Amy Barrett on the court. But the idea is just rushing the process was not the good thing, because that means that already we do not have an impartial Supreme Court, but we have a politicized court. Can impact millions of lives of Americans and others on critical future issues. That's it for this, and I'm looking forward to your questions. Thanks very much.
Thanks for the speech, Professor. And it's very interesting to think that the judiciary does not have an agenda, because today is what I see. I understand that there's a North American desire to keep more and more prisoners using the judiciary.
Yes.
And this helps the lobby. We have the examples like ALEC, American Legislative Exchange Council.
Sure.
And the reflection is maintaining high levels of prisoners is not an agenda. Just think about the 13th Amendment.
Yeah.
But we can discuss this later because now I invite Professor José Romero Pereira Jr. to share his ideas.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Ana Bárbara. And thank you, Professor Arafa, for your speech. I think you have very provocative points. And I actually wrote some things I would like to say, but after listening to you, I think I'll have some questions or I'll venture some comments on some of the things you mentioned. It may be more interesting than reminding stuff about international relations and the US. Or anyway, I think I have to start by saying that I really liked your perspective, in my point of view, a very optimistic one on the fact that her previous convictions, and I'm talking about the new nominee, and her convictions may not be interfering in her ruling because of her view of the law, we would say here in Brazil, maybe a more garantista, someone who is trying to interpret the letter of the law, and that may be some crucial point for her actions. I'd like to start by mentioning something you ended your first remarks with, that is about the politicization of the Supreme Court. Don't you think that the way Donald Trump chose to nominate her and the rushing up, as you mentioned, of her nomination is something to contribute to that view and to aggravate the feelings about her nomination? And that may be something to face, at least in her initial rulings. I mean, she would be scrutinized and always criticized for the process itself, not necessarily for the rulings, and that may be a challenge to her. Also, I think when we compare her to RBG, RBG was an icon. Maybe, if I may, maybe even RBG would have some problems living up to the legacy of RBG, you know? So in that way, it's also a challenge for this new Supreme Court justice to fill in the shoes, you know, of someone like RBG. So I think that's something else to think about, to consider when we think about her new role in the Supreme Court. But for an international relations perspective, I think it's also important to consider the impact of a conservative judge in a moment where the world faces the growing importance of conservative movements, and the US still plays a very important role in the world politically, and the US Supreme Court still has the power to rule over crucial issues of human rights and foreign policy, for instance. So this shift, for 80 years, the Supreme Court has not had some very clear conservative view inside its members, its composition. So that's maybe something I would like to hear from you. And finally, and it's also, we're talking about the future. I mean, we're just in a way speculating. We're proposing some educated guesses, but at the end, we're just speculating, if I may say. So I think from an analytical point of view, I think that this rushing up this nomination, and that's something she'll eventually have to answer for, you know, has to do with the sort of the declining of the conservative forces in the US. Somehow it's paradoxical because public opinion polls and even the polls in the election show that the conservatives are losing majority among people, but the structures of power is still, how can I say, habilitate them to rule, to keep in power. So maybe this move by Donald Trump's administration of trying, and by Republicans in general, in Congress and specifically in the Senate, of rushing the process, may show some reaction to this deeper movement of the society. You know, what in the political arena seems to be very clear, a growing questioning of the political system. You know, the fact that the people, the popular vote does not give the election, does not elect the president. And now we see that, or at least yeah, we see that in the Supreme Court as well. You know, so I leave you with these provocations, if I may. As I said, I have to leave very shortly. I'm very sorry I cannot say.
No, you
but
don't
I'm
have
to get the end of it in the recording as well.
Sure.
And thank you again for your presence.
Of course.
Thank you.
Of course. Thanks, Romero, for having me. Thanks very much. Yeah. Aline, do you want me to respond to Professor Romero first?
Thank you, Professor Romero. And adding to what Professor Romero said, the hearing that took place about 2 weeks ago showed that the nomination has many more political features, as Professor said, than we can imagine. Furthermore, we know that the hearing clearly will not change the position of senators, as Lindsey Graham said, because the majority are Republican in the Senate, and hearings, however, are still used to try to change the view of voters, especially those undecided, who total 9% today. But now I invite Beatriz Santiago and Yasmin Araújo to guide the roundtable discussions.
So, good evening, professors. First, thank you for the opportunity. And my question is, as Arafa said, judges need to follow the law in their decisions. So, can we expect a balance, even with the conservative influence, as has happened before with John Roberts?
Very good question, Laura. I am the balance. If you wanted to talk about balance 100%, that would be very complicated. It's very hard to find that specifically on the highest court in the land, specifically also if critical issues coming to this highest court. Critical issues mean that you will deal with the issues related to the lives of people, like, as I mentioned, abortion, or women's rights, worker rights, social security, voting rights, climate change, environmental justice, LGBTQ issues, all the sex discrimination, you know. So religious freedom, the right to bear an arm or to have a gun. So all these issues are very critical and very essential to American lives. So, and of course, as you know, there are a lot of differences here when you're talking about individual rights and the civic rights. And this is how they start to worry about how Amy Barrett will identify issues. But we have to understand something here, because you're talking about the balance. It's very, very different when you are a judge and when you are a law professor. When you are a law professor, you have much more freedom when you write. So you can criticize. Of course, you are not bound by any rules, except ethical rules in writing and in criticism and stuff like that, or academic rules, I mean. But generally, you are not like bound by specific things when you're talking about like when you are a judge. So you have to look at the fact of the case, and you are only like tight within these facts. But when you are criticizing a judge because he wrote an opinion, when you are a professor, there is nobody who can tell you something. Why you criticize him? It's my own academic intellect. So there is nobody can tell you something. But having a balance, and this balance in terms of politicizing courts, specifically when it comes to the high court, it's very complicated because, as you mentioned, Lindsey Graham, he said that I wish we have the days that we are always at some point, Republicans and Democrats agrees on confirming a specific nominee appointed by a Republican president or a Democrat president or whatever. So at this point, I think it's very complicated because America is totally deeply polarized, and it is very complicated now to see how this country will heal. So we'll find out the balance, including people in power. So as you can see, it's like a kind of a revenge now between the Democrats and the Republicans. So Republicans say that they have the right because, as you mentioned, the majority in the Senate and they already have the White House. So they feel that it's our constitutional duty to fill that seat. And here, in connection to Romero's comment, there is nobody can replace Ruth Bader Ginsburg. There is nobody, I think, on earth will be able to have the legacy of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. But the idea is, at some point, you have to appoint somebody. You will not get to leave the court like that, you know. So, however, if we agree or disagree of having Barrett to fill the shoes of Amy Barrett, I think there is nobody, whatever his or her legal qualifications are, will fill Ruth Bader Ginsburg, because RBG have been fighting for main principles already. These principles have been shaped American lives, specifically for women, like sex discrimination, for example, or social security, or reproductive rights, or abortion rights, or voting rights. These are main principles, and I'm sure that it will last for generations to come. So the idea of finding a balance, it will be hard, at least right now, because you have 6-3 in the court. Do you think they might be balanced, but I cannot tell you that will be guaranteed, because 6-3, you will not be able. However, if you have those 6 from the conservative school of thought, like just they stick to the lateral interpretation of the Constitution rather than the liberal or the liberalism, so they just stick with originalism or textualism, which is different than liberalism or like modernism in terms of looking beyond the text itself. So I think it would be hard to make sure if there's going to be a balance or an equilibrium on the highest court in the land.
Oh, thank you for the answer. My name is Yasmin, so thank you. I take the word for Beatrice now.
Yeah. Hi.
Hello, greetings, Professor. I'm Beatrice. I'm gonna keep up with the next question now. Yeah, so the vacant seat in the Supreme Court was filled this week by the Judge Amy Barrett, as we know, we talked about it. Will this affect the balance of power within the Supreme Court now that majority are Republicans? And what would the shift of power affect Black people in America, like the Black Lives Matter movement?
Very good question. I think when it comes to racial justice, and that's very, very, very critical at the moment, because we can see that there are a lot of growing cases in that terms of racial discrimination. And of course, I do believe that there are racial discrimination in the United States at the current moment, specifically against Black communities. And that these have been fueled by Donald Trump from the first day in office. He have been discriminating against all minorities in the countries. He have been discriminating against Black, against women, against Muslims, against LGBTQ, against every minorities. Then he tried to say, no, I'm not the racist. In the debate, the last debate, he mentioned something was very interesting, was something very hilarious when he said, I'm not the racist in this room. And like, really? Are you serious? So the idea in terms of racial justice, as we saw last summer, like George Floyd, Breonna Taylor's, and others, and others, and others, and maybe cases to come, it's very complicated to see how the court at the moment will deal with this. However, of course, the racial discrimination is totally prohibited within the US Constitution, and it's a crime, and everybody understands, I mean, within the legal profession, that this is a crime and it's illegitimate. So anybody will be like, I don't think that there's going to be any justice or even a judge, regular judge on the appellate court or a circuit or district circuit, just can rule in favor of such a thing. But one of the main things that when you deal with racial justice, I think it's mostly related to government here more than the judges or the judiciary, because government is in charge of at least, I mean, to make things, to heal from this kind of racial justice, not to fuel things up. So he along with the administration have been fueling things up, and he even doesn't like to condemn white supremacists. He called them standby. Remember, in his first debate, his first disastrous or hilarious debate. So I think in terms of racial justice, I don't afraid about how the judges will rule, because of course that's a main legal principles have been developed by the founding fathers, that racial justice is an important important principle, and racial discrimination is totally prohibited. So cases will come up to the Supreme Court at this point if it's controversial. I doubt that there might be some cases, because most of these cases could be like I think ruled and decided within district courts or even the appellate court. So it's hard to go for the controversial, I mean, to the highest court, except it's something like very, very controversial, like Obergefell for the LGBT thing, or the marriage thing, the same-sex marriage. But I think in terms of racial justice, it's much more work should be on the government or the cabinet more than the judiciary. Yeah.
I see. You made a really good point. Thank you for your answer.
Dinada.
So I'm back. The United States is a very powerful and influential country on the international relations, and acknowledging that, how will the increasingly political conservative position influence other countries that take the U.S. as a model?
This is very interesting. I mean, so United States is in a cornerstone in terms of foreign policy generally, as specifically as you mentioned within other countries. For example, for me, it's important when I look at the United States at the Middle East, because it's a region that I come from, as Egypt is my home country. One of the main things that I can say that the United States is trying to shape foreign policies in a way that should be standing for the whole world. But under Donald Trump, I didn't see it that way, because we have been seeing things within the foreign policy in a way that we never have been seeing before. Look at, for example, when we're talking about climate change, and look at his foreign policy here when he just withdrew from the Paris Accord. And that was disastrous, because everybody have been believing in science and the climate change. And he said, I don't think so. He mentioned one time for the forest, the wildfire in forests in California, like last month or something, he said, I don't think that science no. And he mentioned forest management, something weird, something inappropriate. Look at his comment last week when he talking about scientists and doctors and physicians and the front runners that they are dealing with COVID. And he said that people are tired from Dr. Fauci and those idiots. Can you imagine that he's talking about top experts, medical experts in the whole world, that they are working days and nights to save the whole world from the virus, and he's just saying that they are idiots? So in terms of foreign policy, I really didn't see him fit for the office for that, for foreign policy. I mean, when people ask me, I mean, it was interesting to me because last month I was giving, or I had an interviews in a Saudi Arabian law school, and they asked me, it was kind of weird because they told me, oh, we saw in some of your articles that you are criticizing President Trump. Why you don't love President Trump? However, he's good for the Middle East. I said, what do you mean? I mean, I don't have to love or hate Donald Trump. I disagree with the policies of Donald Trump for the foreign policies, of course. I mean, because Donald Trump is just encouraging dictators. He's loving dictators around the world. He's not expanding or enhancing human rights in the region at all. I'm not saying that the previous presidents have been in a good shape, but at least they have been trying, you know. But he, I mean, like encouraging dictators, I mean, like to just do whatever they want, as we can see his relation with Putin, his relation with Kim Jong-un, his relations with dictators in the Middle East. So it was interesting to me to hear comments like that. And I said, and recently you can see, I mean, one thing that he did, I can say recently good in terms of foreign policy, this peace agreement that he signed with Bahrain and United Arab Emirates and recently Sudan getting it. I hope that will work out. I mean, we have this kind of peace agreement before. Probably you remember that when Egypt signed the same thing with Israel as the first Arab country after the war. And the second country became after Egypt was Jordan. So I hope it will happen like that. But the problem is we have these peace agreements for a long while. And of course, nothing on the ground have been applied. And you have been seeing the region have been always like not in a good shape at all. So, I mean, in terms of foreign policy, I don't understand how he, I mean, like Muslim ban, how you can see about the foreign policy here, like banning people from specific countries, Muslim countries mostly, because of their religion. So do we have a religious test here to ban people to come to the United States from specific parts because they are Muslim? So we do question the people religion right now. So it is, I mean, his foreign policies is totally weird. Look at what he's doing with Canada, with Mexico. I mean, so it's China at the moment. So it is tricky for me to and I'm sure for you guys it's important to know that because it's international relations, and I'm sure that probably all of you know better than me since it's your area, that the United States, I can claim that they are not right now the model of the free world. We cannot call it at the moment. I'm not sure after November 3rd or November 4th what will gonna happen. So probably the equation will change. I hope so, but we are not sure. I cannot give an answer to that.
Yeah, it's a very interesting topic. So thank you.
Of course, did not.
That's indeed a very interesting point and question, but keeping up to complete this line of thinking of the last question Yasmin did, do you think this will affect directly the relations with the East Asia? Of for example, your country, Israel?
Of course. I mean, there is no doubt in that. That's for sure. I mean, yes, of course. I mean, there were going to be a lot of things regarding foreign policy, specifically in the Middle East and Israel and also other countries. I hope that the United States will be able to be robust in convincing and persuading the leaders in the region that to come for a peaceful agreement and to apply these agreements on the ground. I mean, it's good to have these agreements on paper, but I'm not sure if it will be really practiced on the ground, because as I mentioned, we have the peace agreement with Israel for a long time. I mean, of course, Egypt after this agreement never had any war with Israel, but I mean, like, for example, people are not allowed to travel to Israel in Egypt, and we have this peace agreement. So we need to see the practical application of these agreements to be on the ground. Otherwise, I think, I mean, these agreements will be just useless. I mean, they're like meaningless. I mean, there's nothing with it, you know. So I think, and here when we're talking about the judiciary in the United States, I don't think that the judiciary have to deal at all with foreign policy questions unless it's something like related to the interpretation of an international law agreement or a provision or something like that. but rather, I mean, judges never ever will deal with any kind of foreign policies questions or so. Yeah.
Thank you very much for your answer. Also, I realized that I made a mistake. I said that your country, your home country was Israel, but it is Egypt. I'm sorry for that.
No, I got it. Don't worry about it.
It was an honest mistake. I'm sorry. But thank you. Your answer was great. Thank you. Shall we proceed, please, Anna?
Thank you, Professor Mohamed Arafa. Thank you, Beatriz. Thank you, Yasmin Araújo. We would like to express our wholehearted thankfulness for the invitation to organize this talk. We thank Juliano for the opportunity and, of course, the participation of the professors and students present here, as well as the directors of the International Relations course at the Catholic University of Brasilia for the support to organize the first podcast of the International Relations community of the Catholic University of Brasilia, a partnership of NUCIC and NUPRI. And remembering, this meeting will be available later on the digital platforms of YouTube and Spotify. Listen and share as many times as you like. I shall give the floor to Professor Mohamed Arafa for any final comments.
No, I just wanted to say thank you very much for all of your effort. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Aline. Thank you, Romero, for inviting me. That was great. Always great to be at the Catholic University in Brasilia. I wish next time to be in person as always and to meet all of you in person. And I wish all of you good luck. And please feel free to let me know if you have any question by email, and I'll be more than happy to participate and to respond. And let's organize something else in the future. For sure. Yeah. Thanks very much, guys. I'm not sure if I can say boa noite. I mean, for me, yes, it will be in an hour or so. But thanks anyway. Muito obrigado.
Thank you so much, too. It was a pleasure to be able to interview you. It was great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Finally, we officially closed the event. Thank you again for the presence. Have a good night.
All right, guys, thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, guys. See ya. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, take care. Bye-bye. Ciao.